This is a fundraising discussion, not in the nature of a solicitation for funds, but as an expression of our gratitude for all the help you've been to us. We've been doing this. CBR has been around for 34 years. I did pro-life work for 4 years prior to that. My wife did pro-life work as a crisis pregnancy medical clinic director prior to that. So we've been at this 35 or 40 years or something in that realm. And one of the defining frustrations of this work is that you can't do it alone, but almost no one's willing to help. And so fundraising is nightmarishly difficult, and as a consequence, we want to say thank you to you and say you're the exception to the rule. You are the people who make it possible for us to be here. We don't have a fundraising department. There are pro-life groups that do, and they spend enormous amounts of money on consultants and marketing people and branding and all of that kind of stuff, and they bring in substantial amounts of money, frankly, but for the average pro-life group, fundraising is very, very difficult. We have chosen to spend our time and money doing the work instead of raising the money. And so we don't take our donors for granted. They are few and far between. And this is our way of saying thank you. Now, fundraising is a topic. I read regularly and closely a broad range of newspapers, news magazines. One that I find to be particularly useful is The Economist magazine. It's a British published magazine. The article that caught my eye in this particular recent issue of The Economist has a subheadline that says, "Baby boomers," that's my cadre, my cohort, and my wife Lois and I are both in that demographic, that age group. The subhead says, "Baby boomers are loaded." So then the question is, and I'm quoting, why are they so stingy? And the article goes on to explain that not all baby boomers are wealthy, but in the aggregate, they have amassed so much wealth that collectively they control 52% of the nation's net worth, even though they're only 20% of the population. 20% of the population, 52% of the country's total wealth is under their control. What does that break down to in terms of numbers? That is 76 trillion dollars baby boomers control. And The Economist magazine, based on all kinds of metrics and analytics and whatever, say that baby boomers are stingy. They hoard the money. They don't give it away. They don't spend it very profusely, not nearly as much so as might have been predicted. And we see that in we try to fundraise among people who obviously have very high net worth, and we get turned away. And if we get any help at all, it tends to be quite nominal help. So now, there's a subcategory of baby boomers, however, who are very generous. In fact, they give away staggering sums of money, and the subcategory is people who are pro-abortion. They're very wealthy, and they give their money to Planned Parenthood, and they give their money to whatever, all these liberal, they keep changing their names, the National Abortion Rights Action League or Pro-Choice America, whatever they are. Interestingly, conservative billionaires are far, far stingier about abortion, about pro-life work, than left-wing billionaires are. And I subscribe to an analytical newsletter written by and published by someone for whom I have great respect, Richard Viguerie. He pioneered conservative direct mail fundraising. And I want to close by just giving you a sense of what we're up against here. These numbers they are very dispiriting numbers, I can tell you, but this is what we're up against. Liberal nonprofits, left-wing nonprofits, and that's the bulk of whom, or at least a high percentage of whom, are pro-abortion organizations, raised about $700 more money in the last 10 years than conservative nonprofits. So the nonprofits that include pro-abortion groups, vis-a-vis the nonprofits that include pro-life groups, we're comparing. The pro-abortion groups raised $21 billion versus between $3 and $4 billion raised by pro-life groups. Roughly 20 versus roughly 4%, $20 billion versus $4 billion. So we're being outspent by orders of magnitude, and that breaks down to pro-abortion nonprofits raising 1,000% more money than pro-life nonprofits in recent years. Pro-abortion nonprofits, in liberal groups generally, including pro-abortion nonprofits, in number about 20,000 single-issue nonprofits, liberal nonprofits. Conservative nonprofits are only between 1,000 and 2,000 organizations numerically. So we're not only being outspent by orders of magnitude, there are 20 times more liberal, left-wing advocacy groups, including most notably pro-abortion groups, than there are conservative groups. So there are more pro-abort groups, more people, activists doing pro-abortion work, and they are outspending us by staggering amounts of money. What's the solution to this problem? We wish we knew. We just do the best we can with what we've got, and from time to time, we come back to you and say thank you, because we've spent more than 34 years hanging by a thread, but by God's grace, we're still here. And by God's grace, we are still, and I don't say this immodestly, we are the most feared organization in the pro-life movement by orders of magnitude. I've had pro-abortion activistic friends say to me, we fear your organization more than any other, and thank you for that, thank God for that, and talk to you again soon.